Hi guys! Welcome to the first ever video I've ever done of watercoloring, and we're going to be doing this over the weekends, and it's going to be a 3-part series. But before we get started, make sure that you have a water. You should have a little mason jar in your little kit or some sort of jar. Make sure that has water in it. Step 1. So if you don't have that, make sure that you get that before continuing the video. And you can pause the video by tapping on the screen and pushing that little plus button or triangle sometimes, and that should pause the video. Otherwise, if you're having some issues, go ahead and push your button and get a hold of the team and they'll help you with the video. All right, get your water and we'll get started. Once you have your water, you're gonna go ahead and take your pipette, which is in your little kit, and we're going to wet our paints before I explain what we're going to be doing, because while I explain, our colors will be getting all soaked up and ready for us to use. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your water, your little pipette, go ahead and squeeze the top into the water, and then unsqueeze. Should fill up with water for you. Then just go ahead and drop a few drops into each of your watercolors. You don't need a whole lot, but they're just enough to get them soaking. You might have to go back in for some water. All right. Now, while that is soaking up, I will explain to you what our project is. So you can see, this is what we're going to be working on. And don't worry, I know it looks a little difficult, but we will get there. And it's going to be 3 parts, so no need to worry. And you can go and you can pause this video at any point or rewind it or anything you need, so you have enough time to work on whatever you need. All right. Now that I have showed you our project, I'm going to go ahead and show you what our kit kind of includes so you kind of know everything. We already have our watercolors out and our jar out over here. The rest of this stuff is some little paper towels, and you can go ahead and put those at the top or at the side. That's just to kind of dry your brush off as we're going here. You'll also notice that you have some crumpled up paper towels, and those are for making clouds later. So those are crumpled for a reason. Otherwise, you have a big brush. I'm just going to set that here. A flat brush and a little pointed brush. For this first part, we're only going to be needing this big brush and this flat one. So you can go ahead and leave these in here. You can leave these in here for now too. We will be needing them later. All right, we can go ahead and get started into part 1. I'm going to move this off to the side and we'll get started. You'll notice I'm outside right now because it was the quietest place in the building at the time. But here's your canvas. You'll notice it's taped onto a real canvas, but please make sure that you're watercoloring onto this side, the paper side with the tape. All right. The first thing that we're gonna do is you're gonna grab your big brush. Mine is just stained. It has no color on it at all. It's just stained, so see, no colors coming off. I'm gonna go ahead and dip it into my water. Just kind of wipe off the excess. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna watercolor, or you're just gonna spread some water all over this first spot. Just a light layer, just like that. You might have to go in for more water. You don't want any water to be pooling up. You don't want it to be drenched by any means, but there should be enough water on there that the paper can start to soak it up just a little bit. All right. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Yeah, there you go. There's just a little sheen on there. There's no water dripping anywhere. I mean, I have a little bit of poolage right there, but that's okay. So just something that looks just like that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and give you a few seconds just to get that done. All right. If you haven't gotten it all watered yet, please pause the video and maybe rewind. And how you do that is you click on the screen and push the pause button, or you can click the rewind button. Otherwise, I am going to keep going. Now what you're going to want to do is take your flat brush, dip it in some water, and we're going to be using the color now. For this first one, you'll notice that the sky is just blue. So that's what we're going to be doing. This is called washing in watercolor. So you're going to want to go right into your blue, get a little bit of color on there. There's not too much color, just enough. And you're only going to want to put the color right at the very top, just like this. Okay? And you can kind of go back and forth a couple of times. Maybe bring it down just a little bit. Okay? And now this is the wash part. So we got our color on there, and now we need to wash it. And how to do that is you get more water onto your brush. Doesn't matter if there's any color, you just need a lot of water on your brush. And you're going to go from top down all the way to the bottom. And you'll start to notice that your color slowly drags down. So every time you go, grab more color and keep going down. And at this point, my brush is taking a little bit too long, so you can use this big brush too. This has no color on it again. And you can just go ahead and drag that all the way down. And you'll see when you use your big brush, it takes a lot of that color off, which is okay. No big deal. So you can kind of start to tell that the bottom is very light and the top is a little bit darker. All right, now that I've used my big brush, this one will give me a little bit more precision. So I'm going to go in with a little bit more color. That. Just at the top. And now I'm just going to use my little brush here and do a little bit more precision work. So you can do this however you like. If you want it darker, more down, that's fine. You could even add a little bit of other colors if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. Or if you just want to stick to what the tutorial is, that is perfectly awesome as well. All right. I have kind of gotten to the point where I am happy with it. It's kind of like a gradient, dark at the bottom, or dark at the top, light at the bottom. And that's kind of what you want to keep going on. You might also notice up here in my corner, I have a little bit of water pooling. And you could leave that if you want, but it is best to soak it up. So you can do that one of two ways. You can dry your brush off and slowly start to soak that up and just keep wiping it off. And then kind of just fill back in the part. You'll notice I don't have any pooling there. There is a little bit of loss of color, but that's okay. If you don't want to use the brush, you can always use your paper towel and just suck up the water from the corner. But that will also take some color off. So if you accidentally take off too much color, just go right back into your blue and add. Watercolor is very forgiving, so if you make mistakes, you can always take your paper towel, dab it a little bit, and keep going. But make sure it's a dabbing motion and not a swipe, because then you can kind of ruin the paper. All right. If you haven't finished your gradient or your wash of color, you can go ahead and pause the video by clicking on the screen and then that little triangle button, or sometimes it's 2 lines, okay? So go ahead and pause now if you need some more time. Otherwise, if you are ready to keep moving on, we are going to be doing the wash of the middle. And this is going to be the same technique, except we are adding some colors in. Alrighty. So just like we did with the first one, get some water onto your big brush. Dab any of that extra off that you need. And then we're going to just color the background with plain water. This is no color on here, just water. All right, and go ahead and give your background a nice wash. If you have gotten your water dirty, too dirty to still be clear, you're gonna wanna get some new water. But at this point, it probably isn't too dirty. Just make sure you get that paper nice and covered. All right, let's check it out. You can see I just got a little shine on there, little sheen. No water pooling, but just enough that the water or the paper is wet. All right, and now we're going to start washing our second scene. So you'll notice at the very top is blue, kind of similar to this, and then it slowly goes into some orange colors or some red for our sunset scene. All right, so first we will start with our blue again. Go ahead and dip into that blue with your flat brush. If you want to add some water to your brush, that's perfectly fine. And then just add some color right up at the top. A little bit more. All right. Now since we're doing two different colors, you're not going to want a lot of color at the top because we're not going to bring it all the way down like we did here. We're only going to bring it about half or somewhere in this area. All right, so you might even want to wash your brush before you start pulling the color down. All right, and then just like we did before, go ahead and just start brushing down like this. You can take your time. You'll notice it kind of starts to do this, and that is okay. That adds to the watercolor look. Go ahead and take some time to kind of gradient your blue down. If at any point it gets too dark for your liking, go ahead and dab your paper or your paper towel on there. It'll get rid of some of that color. If you do need to do that, you might need to add a little bit more water before you keep working because that paper towel will take off quite a bit of water. So, once you get your blue done, you'll notice that this one is much darker than this one. That's how I like mine. If you want it to be the same, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and have it dark. Otherwise, if you are still working on your blue, now is a good time to pause the video by tapping on your screen, pushing that little triangle or sometimes up and down lines for pausing. Otherwise, if you're ready to move on, we are going to be starting the kind of reddish orangish part of our wash. All right. Go ahead and take your flat brush into your red. And you don't want too much on there because the red can get kind of crazy a little fast. So I kind of like to just dab it off on the side. I don't know if you can tell, my red is pretty watery because I just dabbed right onto the pan and then I kind of wiped off. So it's just pretty watery at this point. And if you're afraid it's going to be too dark, you can go ahead and just give it a little swirl in your water. There's still red on here. May not look like it, but there is. All right. Then you can go ahead and add the orange or this red kind of in the bottom third. If you like it up a little bit more, that's fine too, but I'm going to go right down here. Give that little stripe of color, just like that. And then I'm going to wash my brush. I'm even going to dab a little bit of that water off because I have a lot of water on my paper now. You can kind of tell. See, it starts to run. That's a little bit too much for my liking, so I just dried my brush off. That'll help me out a little. And now for this wash, you're going to be going up with the color and down with the color. It's a little bit more tricky here. Just kind of go up and down. The colors will blend together, and that is what you want. Now, it's kind of hard for you guys to tell because it's so bright outside, but I have just a little bit of red left here, so I even need a little bit more. So I'm just going to add a little bit more here in the center, and then just wash it out like we did before. So this is going to kind of create that sunset look. All right. This is kind of what I've got so far. Blue at the top, kind of fading in between red and blue here, and then red, and then just light color down here. All right, if you are still working on your red, you can go ahead and pause this video by clicking on the screen and pushing that little button in the middle that looks like a triangle, and that will pause the video. Otherwise, if you are ready to move on, we are going to be working on this scene now. You'll notice that it is blue, but it's not the same blue as this. It's darker. And I will show you how to do that. But first, we will work on the initial wash, which again, we start with our big brush. Ooh, I got a bug on there. Wipe that off. All right, got my brush. There's no color on this. It's just water like before. Go ahead and get into your water and give that last part a good wash of color. Even just work it into the corners, work it into the center. All right. Got that nice watery sheen on there, but nothing pooling, nothing dripping. Just wet enough for the paper to start soaking up the water. Alrighty. Now we're going to go ahead and start washing our color on. So once again, flat brush, and we're going to go into plain blue. Just like that. And go ahead and put that stripe of color at the top. And then you can go ahead and start pulling that color down. And you'll notice that it does look the exact same as this, and that is perfectly fine because here in a little bit we will darken the color up once we get this initial wash done. So go ahead and take some time to put your blue wash on there. Go ahead and drag the color all the way to the bottom. If you need more paint, just go ahead and add paint. And every time you add paint, you're going to want to add it to the top, because I'll show you. Let's say I didn't have enough color down here and I wanted to add some more. If you dip right into your blue and add color right there, it's going to ruin the gradient. You know, you could try and fix it, you know, this kind of looks okay. You know, sometimes the sky has different shades in it, and that is perfectly fine. So if you like that, that is great. Go ahead and keep it. Otherwise, if you do something that you don't like, I'll show you with your paper towel. You just kind of lay it on there, dab the part that you want to kind of get rid of, and then it's basically gone. Go ahead and just clean the brush and wash the color right back over it. It gets right rid of it. You can experiment too. If you don't want your sky just kind of plain and add more color, go ahead and experiment. You can, as long as your paper is wet, the color is still wet, you can erase it with your paper towel. So go ahead and experiment if you would like. All right. If you haven't finished your blue wash on the end here, now is a good time to pause the video by clicking on the screen and clicking that little button in the center that looks like a triangle. Otherwise, we will move on. Alrighty. Ooh, the mask is blowing around. Might even get some rain out here. We'll see how the video goes. All right. We are going to go ahead and keep moving on. If you are at a stopping point and you don't really want to continue, that is perfectly fine. Go ahead and pause the video, and you can start this at any time. Anytime that you're not busy or just wanting something to do, you can always pause this and leave it for another time or another time this weekend, because we will be moving right along each weekend with the project. Otherwise, if you're ready to go, we are going to keep working. So now we're going to kind of perfect our background or deepen those colors, get kind of a little bit more detail where we want the detail. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and work from this side to this side again. So start on this side, get your clean big brush out. Go ahead and dip into that water. Make sure your water is still clean enough to be pretty clear. If there's a little bit of a haze of color, that is perfectly fine. You won't really see it in the end. But if it's too dark, you should get some new water. Otherwise, go ahead and just add a little bit more water to the top of your first scene. All right. Now is the time for your crumpled paper towels. So that should be in your kit. Otherwise, you could crumple these, or you could use a tissue or whatever sort of absorbent material crumpled up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start creating our clouds. So if you remember before, when I made that little mistake down here with the color, what I did is I dabbed the paper towel on there and it got rid of the color, and it didn't leave a pattern or a mark because I laid it flat and I just picked it straight up, and it only got rid of the color with no pattern. But when you use a paper towel, kind of crumple it up, it will do the same thing but leave a little bit of a pattern. So you're going to go ahead and take your paper towel and dab it where you want a cloud, okay? Your cloud can be anywhere in the sky, okay? This is more down towards the bottom, so if you want it more towards the bottom, maybe some smaller clouds. But otherwise, starting your clouds, it's a good idea to put the bigger ones at the top. All right, go ahead and just dab it on there. Got an ant rolling across my screen. There we go. And you'll notice it starts to take the color. You can kind of wiggle back and forth. You don't want to rub too much because that can, take layers off of the actual paper, and you don't want to do that too much. You'll see I got pooling up here again, so I'm just going to go ahead and dab that away. Okay, and you'll start to kind of see my color is going away, and that will give us the look of clouds. If your paper towel is getting too wet in one spot, you can always uncrumple and recrumple. Otherwise, you can use your other paper towel. And you can have as many clouds as you like. But it's good to keep bigger clouds at the top, smaller clouds at the bottom, or however you like. It's kind of just up to you. You'll kind of see. This is when you know that you're rubbing too much on the paper. This is the paper crumpling up and rolling off. So that's when you'll know you're doing it too much. If that happens, just go ahead and kind of get what you can off. See, these kind of little bits can roll off. Otherwise, just leave it alone. If you rub it too much, it can get worse. All right. If you notice that your paper is getting too dry to pull up some more color, I would take your smaller flat brush, a little water, and put some water where you want the clouds, where you want it to lighten up. Now the clouds are never going to be perfect. You never look in the sky and see the perfect cloud. So they're all shapes and sizes, all different directions. They can look however you want them to look. All right. You can kind of see where my clouds are starting. I got one here, and a few smaller ones in there. If you're still working on your clouds, now is a good time to pause the video by tapping on the screen and pushing that button in the middle. Otherwise, if you're ready to keep going, we will pronounce our clouds. You can kind of see, it's harder to see the clouds in mine at this point. And how we're going to fix that, or remedy that, is we're going to take this bad boy, our little skinny brush, and we're going to add color around the clouds. Not in the cloud, around it. So, good way to do that. Get your brush wet. Go into your blue. And right now, I have a lot of color on my brush because I just went right into the pan, and since the pan has been sitting in the water for a while, that color is getting kind of almost putty-like, kind of like an icing, and that makes the color very thick, which is good for some things, but for this part, we're not going to want it super, super thick. So, I'll show you how we're going to get around this. If you look at your colors, you've got your colors here, and then you have this part here. And a lot of people overlook this part of your palette, but this is a very, very cool tool to use in watercoloring. So, lots of color on my brush, and that's just too much, but I still want to have color. What you can do, you know what, I'll put my paper towel behind here so you can see the color a little bit better. All right, go ahead. If you got too much color, roll some of that color onto your palette. Work it, and I'm working back and forth, and I'm twisting the brush at the same time to get some of that color off. You can go ahead and get yourself a nice little pool of blue. So now my brush has blue all throughout it, all throughout all the bristles is blue since I was going back and forth and rolling, but it doesn't have a big pool of blue on there, and that is exactly what we're looking for. Just blue all throughout your brush, nothing pooled up on it. And now what you're gonna do, get your brush that's filled with that color, dip it in some water, and now, this is kind of the scary part, so take a deep breath. Trust yourself. You're going to trace around your clouds, and this is going to be hard for me to show since it's kind of bright. But what I'm doing is I'm looking where my clouds are or where I want them to be, and I'm going to outline where they are. Just like that. And then I'm blending the color out. And to blend, you just add a little bit more color, just so that it's not a straight line of color. It's kind of like washing, but more controlled. Okay? So you can start to see this cloud is popping out, this cloud, maybe there's a cloud here, definitely this cloud. And I'm just gonna keep going and working that. So I need a little bit more color now. I'm gonna roll back into my color, get some more water, and I'm just gonna keep outlining. Oops, I had too much water that time. Well, maybe it's okay. There we go. You can start to see those clouds popping out and giving themselves a little bit of character. I know this is overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before, but trust me, clouds look like anything. So, you know, you can really give her your best go, and it's probably going to end up looking like clouds. Or maybe your sky doesn't have clouds, and that's okay. All right. And then I'm just kind of washing that color all the way to the bottom. And there you go. Have some clouds. Sometimes it seems like magic. If you're not finished with your clouds, perfectly fine. You can go ahead and pause this video, or if you need to re-watch for some technique, go ahead and rewind the video. And to do that, you would pause, and then there's a little scroll button on the bottom that you can grab and drag backwards. Otherwise, sometimes there's a little bit of a rewind button that you can push as well. So go ahead and take as much time on those clouds as you need, and then come on back and we'll keep moving on. All right. Now that we're ready, we're gonna move on to this scene. The background of this scene. If it's getting too long of a sitting point, go ahead and pause. You can pick this up anytime you like. This weekend, I'm gonna go ahead and adjust my seating position. I'm sitting on the floor in our south gazebo, and it's beautiful outside. You might hear the birds and some trucks and things. But here we go. Now, for this scenery, I do not have any clouds. This here is a little sun that I put in, but I don't have any clouds in mine. If you want clouds in yours, you can go ahead and use the same technique that we used for the first scenery. And if you need to watch that technique again, go ahead and rewind, because I won't be showing it again. So if you want clouds, go ahead and use this technique here. Otherwise, we're going to be doing what is here. Okay? We're not going to be doing this. This was actually an accident by me in this part as well. And I didn't mind it too much, so I just kind of left it there. So if you want those, you're going to want to make an accident, but otherwise I won't show how to do that. All right, we're going to keep working on this part. And this one, it's kind of hard to tell. I'll show you off to the side here. You can kind of tell this is a little bit more orange than mine is here. And maybe the sky is a little bit darker. You can kind of see a little bit of waves in here. That's what we're going to be doing. Ooh, the truck is loud. that's what we're going to be doing. So this one doesn't need a whole lot of work. We're just kind of adding some touches here and there. So if you have some personal preferences or you want to try out some different things, this is the perfect time to do that. All right, here we go. I'm going to go into my orange. And again, my paint is getting kind of putty or too thick at this point. So I am going to be using my palette again, just to roll some of the color off. If at any point your paints are too dry to use or too putty-like, go ahead and just take your pipette, this little guy, and add some more water drops. All right. Go ahead and get color on your brush, water on your brush, and add some orange right where we have that red. And I'm kind of going back and forth every which way. But I'm really adding water to my brush and blending it out just like we did for the wash. Okay? We all know how a sunset looks. Very blended together. Sometimes there's little waves in the color because, ooh, hear the train? Sorry guys. Can't control the train. That's okay. But like I was saying, we know how a sunset looks. The colors are very blended together. Sometimes there's ribbons of color. If you want that, perfect. Sometimes there's even a little bit of purple in there. So if you wanted to get kind of crazy, you could add a little bit of purple. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and do that. Let's do some purple right in here. Right by the red and orange. Getting crazy in here. All right. Okay, now, let's see. This is kind of to the point where I am just looking, making sure that I don't have anything sticking out too much, or making sure that everything on the page is how I want it, on purpose. This could be the time that you want to add clouds or some more color. And you know what? Since this is a sunset, I might even add a little tiny, tiny touch of black. Very, very watery, just right at the top. And really, really water it down. So now I have no color on my brush. I'm just kind of putting a little bit of gray, black on the top. Maybe it's a little bit closer to nighttime than sunset. Maybe a little bit more. You can kind of tell that there's no one way to do watercolor. It's always going to be different. You can always add your own personality into it. Sometimes for tutorials, you just want to do exactly what they do, and that is awesome as well. But you can always add your own little touches of personality, a little bit of spunk if you want to. Otherwise, just following the tutorial is great too. All right, now is a good time to pause the video if you're still working on this scenery, or you can rewind and watch again if you want some more technique. Otherwise, we are going to work on the third scenery, and this will wrap up the first part, or maybe the second part if it's getting too long for you. But we are going to start this. So if you are not ready to move on, go ahead and pause the video by tapping on the screen and pushing the button in the middle. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into the third scene. All right, you can kind of tell, you know, this scene especially looks different from this one, and that is awesome. That's great. I'm even going to add a little bit more water there. Anyways. This scene is a lot darker than what we have here. And I will show you how we're going to darken that up. And for this one, we're going to be mixing our paint colors. All right? How we're going to do that is you can take your small brush, or if you want, you can use your big brush, but I kind of like sorry for the loud car. I like the small brush for this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna utilize our palette over here like we did to get rid of some color on our brush, but we can use that to mix our colors as well. So we're going to take our blue, get quite a bit on your brush, and wipe it right onto your palette. Kind of try and keep it in one small area, it'll make it easier for you. You might even want to get a couple of dabs of color on there. Okay. Once you have your blue, go ahead and get into your black. And go ahead and right into the blue. Mix the colors together. Now, none of us are going to get the exact same blue because there's no exact measurements. So what you're going to need to do is really look at your color. It's going to be a little bit hard to tell because the camera can never quite get exactly what's going on. I'll show my best. So this looks very dark here in the pool, but when I go over here and kind of thin it out, I can tell. When I do this, I can tell that it looks a little bit blue and it's not too black. And that is what we're looking for. Something in a dark blue or like a gray blue look. All right. If you need to pause the video to keep mixing your colors or rewind, now is the best time to do that. Otherwise, we're going to start applying our color. To apply our color, we're going to use our flat brush. For some reason, I like to feel my brush. But anyways, flat brush. Go into your water. And go ahead and put a little bit of water over the last scene. Once you have that, go ahead and get more water onto your brush and go right into that dark color you just made. And it should be not too thick and not too thin, kind of in between. Probably more on the thin side. And then just go ahead and wash that color right on like we did the first time. Just another wash right onto the top. Right on top of that color we did before. You can go side to side, you can even go diagonal. The video that I watched, the tutorial that I watched, she had hers at an angle and it almost looked like rain. So if you like that look, go right ahead. And then once again, you're going to want to just wash that color all the way to the bottom. Darker at the top, lighter at the bottom. So go ahead and keep working on that. Now for my liking, this is not quite dark enough for me. So I'm actually going to go straight into the black. Just a tiny bit of black because it can get kind of crazy too quick. I'm going to go right into the black, water it down, and go at the top with some black. You can kind of tell my paper is starting to get pools of water. See this kind of running down? I'm getting pools of water. And that's okay sometimes. So at this point, I'm going to leave it. because when it dries, it's going to leave designs. So let me show you an example. This little design here was created by a water pool, because at the lightest part here was the high part of the paper. So all the color ran down to this low part. And it got that kind of design. You can kind of tell here a little bit of the same thing was happening. So I'm going to leave it. If you don't like those designs or that pattern, you can go ahead and dab that color up or that water up. Otherwise, I'm going to leave mine that way. I'm even going to add, I think I'm going to add a lot of black. I think so. Why not? Everybody's can be different. You can put clouds in this one if you want. Little designs. Maybe you want sideways lines like this. I don't know. Or if you want to keep it plain and simple, exactly like the example, that is awesome. Whatever you feel comfortable or whatever you want to do, it's great. All right. Nope, maybe I got too much of a dark spot there. This little balled up thing here, that is just paper, so you can just pick it off. If you leave it there, it will soak the color will soak up into that piece of paper, and you know there'll be more color in that spot, which is fine too. All right. If you are still working on your background of the last scene, keep on working. Go ahead and pause the video or rewind, whatever you need to do. Otherwise, that completes the first part or maybe the second part of our watercolor weekend videos. So thank you so much for giving this a try. I know maybe it didn't turn out quite like you wanted, or maybe you want to keep working on it a little bit, and that is awesome too. By no means does this need to be perfect. You know, everybody has a first time, everybody is learning, everybody's trying, so don't fret if it's not exactly how you wanted it to look, because there's always somewhere to start and always a place to keep going. But thank you so much for joining, and we will keep working on this project next weekend. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.